Hello, everybody. Excited to be back with you. Dan Twiford and Shane Gwaltney here from Synced Up Designs with another episode of End Zone to End Zone, our podcast about the marching arts. We find ourselves now pre-indoor season of 2024-2025 that we're about to head into. Right now, you might be thinking, are we doing it this year? You know, you might be on the fence, or you may have a storied program that does this every year. Either way, we're going to be throwing some helpful hints out there, more so on the planning and logistics side, just so you can kind of get your act together, all the preseason stuff. And I think we all know we've gotten to the end of the season and wish we did something better in September and October that would have set us up. So that's kind of the spirit of what we're talking about today. And I think we've got some really, really good things to throw your way.
Cool. Let's get into it.
Sweet. So the first one is understanding the rules and deadlines for any circuit that you might want to compete in, whether that's WGI, whether that's your local circuit. They all have websites, right? So getting a feel, make sure you get the information, first of all, get signed up for anything that they're going to send out. You're on the email lists. And I 100% guarantee there is somebody who works for that circuit who you can get on the phone with if you have questions and who would walk you through it. You may have another band director in a neighboring district that you've got, a congenial relationship with. You could feel comfortable calling them and just saying, what do you do? So getting an understanding of what the circuit is. Okay, they compete from, the end of January through mid-March, and a school like mine is maybe going to do this many contests, and here's when the registrations are, and here's when those contests are. So that's a good place to start, the calendar.
Sure, yeah, and the good thing about our activity is it's educationally based, so that if somebody has information, they are more than willing to give it up and making sure that the community thrives and does all the right things. So I feel like everybody's in a safe spot to ask questions on that end, and definitely ask the people who know so that we can keep this thing going for sure. I think, when people are talking about deadlines, the first one is they need to know when the gates open up for WGI. When should you have your money, PO in? I think WGI is not accepting checks now, so you have to have a PO. So it's like they changed that this year, so you want to be aware of that. I think that's the rules that I just saw.
Read the rules.
Yeah, read the rules, but I'm pretty sure I just saw a memo that go out on that. And most importantly, know, because there's a lot of people that want to do combined schools, that has a deadline, that has parameters on what you can do. And it's kind of loose, so you need to be able to get in the amount of people in the schools that you want to do and send it in for a review. And then typically they've always okayed it within reason. So, but there's many variables everywhere, so they can't really just say, this is the line, don't cross it. They want to see your situation and send the stuff in. So,
and it's really all what you want. Maybe if you're just dipping your toe in the water, you just want to be able to get out there in front of a crowd at your local home circuit, give the kids a couple performance opportunities. But even for that, make sure you get what you want out of it by reading what the schedule is and maybe talking to somebody who's walked that walk before.
Yeah, and along with it, especially if you're new and you're just like, hey, I want to get into the indoor thing. How do I, what's the entry point, yada, yada. Some things you want to think about is, your rehearsal schedule on that day, like thinking ahead, right? Like, am I going to have to show up at a show 2 hours before my performance time? Okay, I need to start thinking about that in the season, what my Saturday is going to look like. If we have an early performance time, now we're super early rehearsing, or we're just showing up, doing a run, and going to the show. There's a lot of variables in there, and it's good that you get your mind set around what to expect. That way it'll help you start to plan.
Or a certain contest you might want to go to, but then you realize, there's transportation you'd have to arrange, or an overnight, and maybe this isn't a year you can do that. So just kind of giving yourself what the goal is and what's the project I'm working on. Have the end in mind from the beginning.
Yeah, that definitely helps, because you don't want to be surprised by really anything on that end. Especially when it comes to roles of something that's written down that you just could have read it and then ignored all the headache that you just got because you built a prop too big and it can't get in any facility.
Right.
Like that type stuff.
While we're on calendar, that's the performances side of things. You equally, maybe even more so, need to be really dialed in about the rehearsal side of things. Because if your school has volleyball, basketball, and they all do, right? And you need to rehearse in a gym for a certain kind of presentation. You've mentioned on other episodes about having, a backup performance area is something you could think about. Just so that you've got options and that you're not going to have this big goal and not have the foundation and the time to develop it.
Right, exactly. Next thing is selecting a show, right? So we're not going to talk about, what type of show you need to pick now, but when you pick a show, you need to determine what type of class you're going to be in, how much time you're expected to rehearse in a week, because that's going to ultimately determine your production value in game of what you can do and what you can't do. And then, of course, you're going to want to think about how long your season is. Maybe you are really concert heavy and you had a really big Christmas production and you can't really start until January, Like, what does that look like for a 4-month season?
Right.
And like, what are you trying to do with it? And then most importantly, like, find the goals out for your group. Like, if you're just now trying to get into WGI and or indoor percussion or winds or guard, and you may not understand the full scope of things, and maybe you just kind of want to dip your toe in the water, like coming in regional A, novice, PSA, whatever people call it in their local area, is always a good entry point, but that still requires you to understand the rules and stuff that we just talked about. So just still make you aware of that. Just because you're new doesn't give you an excuse to be ignorant, I guess.
So selecting the difficulty of the show that is going to fit with your rehearsal schedule. And then on the topic of selecting a show, you have to have something the kids are going to get behind, right?
When you're selecting good point on that. The first thing I do when I talk to clients when we're doing custom stuff. Now, when you're buying a show off the shelf, you can kind of peruse and see what's going on. But when you're building something custom, if that opportunity is in your table, then talk to the members. I know last year, the kids were really about this story that a children's book had taught them, and they really wanted to do a show about this children's book. And I was like, heck yeah, let's do that. So it was kind of a reverse. We didn't present the idea to them. They came and said, hey, we would really like to do this. This means a lot to us. And we built a show around it. It was very cool. And it was an easy buy-in for them because it was their show, So I wouldn't necessarily be afraid to listen to the members and kind of what there is. Just as long as you got good designers on the end that can like bring that idea to life.
Right. And that can express itself in a few different ways. It can be the theme of the show. It can be the look or type of character in the show. And it could be music. Now, I know a lot of times with music, it's not just like, would I make the choice to do music that my kids are into, but there's also the licensing aspect. So, when we see a lot of these big top groups doing shows that have modern pop music or whatever in it, you can bet they paid
they paid some licensing fees on
price
top of the arranging and composing and all that.
So and that can be $500 or $600 a tune. It could be less. It could be $100 a tune, or it just depends.
Right, exactly.
But have that in mind. Like if that's the first place you go is, we're gonna do a show of all modern pop tunes of artists. If you're gonna compete in your circuit, you may price yourself out of that depending. So doesn't have to be music.
So just in general, when you're selecting a show, you just really need to consider all the variables: rehearsal space, the amount of times you want to rehearse, the entry level, whether it's novice, A, or open world, whatever you want to do and how you want to get in. Before you select your show, all those variables come into play just so you don't overshoot what you can actually achieve or undershoot and the members are bored, right? So you want to make sure all that stuff is into play when you're selecting a show, and we could talk about how to design one later on and another one, but just all the fundamentals when you start listening to a show. Don't just be like, I like that show, let's get it. There's a lot of things under the hood that allow you to actually produce that show, and you just need to consider those before you kind of get into it.
Right.
So,
cool. The next one we wanted to get into is just ensemble interest. And this is for certain groups, you've got kids beating down the door to be in your indoor guard. You've got a top group and a feeder group, the introductory level. There are schools who have got that, maybe even deeper, 3 groups. I know that that's out there. But there's other groups who are just thinking about doing an indoor ensemble for the first time. Maybe you've got a nice core of like 5 to 10 rock star kids who really are passionate about doing this, and you could be on board as director if there's enough interest, but you just like need to fill out the ensemble. You need to get all, kind of reassure yourself that this is gonna be a successful thing if you do all the planning and forethought on it. So a few tactics you could look at for that is, number one, you've got to open your mouth and tell everybody. So the whole band needs to know if membership is open. And there's a lot of kids. I know when my school first we didn't even do a competitive indoor. We just did like winter percussion stuff. And there were kids from other sections running to be a drummer. Yes, I want to do that. And honestly, same with color guard. Just because if your friends are doing it and you're not in that section normally, maybe all winter you want to go get to have that extra hang with your friends and get to do what they do. So definitely shout it from the mountaintops. You can organize some quick events if you want to generate interest, whether that's a watch party. I know that's how I got introduced to all this. Was we're all going to be, after Friday's band rehearsal, we're going to wheel the TV, dating myself, into the band room, and we're going to watch some cool indoor drumline and just see what y'all think. And I had never seen it before, and, the rest is history. But, that kind of thing, exposure. And, the third thing I'll say is, a lot of times for guard or for indoor percussion or even for indoor winds, there's going to be some kids who have never done that before but want to give it a try. And you should be really encouraging about being a multi-instrumentalist or a multi-talented person. When you start band, you're very much in your silo of your instrument. And when kids start to break free of that, I think that's really cool. Multi-instrumentalism is something that should be encouraged, and there's a million great examples you could point to of famous players who do that kind of thing. So I think it's something to be encouraged, especially if it's going to work for them. Why stand in their way?
Sure, yeah. A couple things piggyback on that is I love having horn players play vibes, extra instruments in the pit, synth, things like that. The only downfall is you don't want to create a culture to where you steal from the band during the fall. So you just want to make sure that's clear to the band director. Hey, can we use some of these kids during indoor? I promise I won't let them transfer over for the fall. Unless they're like an oboe player that doesn't really march anyways, but we need a good synth player.
Sure.
Those are always the best marimba players and synth players in the end that I've seen transfer over, I guess.
Piano players, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, whatever you do on that end, just make sure you have those caveats in place and parameters that allow both programs to thrive, right?
Right.
And just be respectful. The next thing is, if your program allows it, invite 8th graders up. There's nothing better than to have that 8th grader or 2 that's playing rack in the high school group and goes back and tells their middle school kids. And now you're planting those real seeds in the middle school versus like, the other version is you show up with all the high school kids who are all a foot taller than the middle school kids and intimidating and come play this, and it's missed a huge stepping stone of what they're playing in middle school to high school. And then sometimes that could be a deterrent if the middle school kids don't have that immediate connection to that next level, right? So that's something to think about. And of course, just making an announcement to the general Gen Pop of school. Hey, we're looking for piano players. Or do you play drum set? Like that, or do you play guitar? Maybe your indoor show has a really cool, neat idea that you want a flamenco guitar in it, and you got to reach outside the band. Like, go for it.
Right.
Ask around.
Or if you're doing a show that needs like fun, talented people. I know I've heard stories of like someone did a circus show and they just put on the school announcements, if anybody can juggle or do stilt walking, and there was just like this random kid who didn't do band at all. I stilt walk. Actually, I'd love a reason to do it. And then all of a sudden there he is, WGI finals.
Yeah.
So, hey, give it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, on the same kind of thing of putting your people together for the project, maybe talk about staffing a little bit.
Yeah, staffing is hard because some groups are just on an island. Like they can't reach out further than 30 miles from where they're at because of maybe a college is 2 hours away and that's their resource. And it's just hard for somebody to come out daily. Maybe weekends are a thing, but the daily rehearsal might be an issue for some places. And if that's the case, then might be something where the percussion director is having to do sectionals every day during the week and then has an ensemble on one day a week where everybody comes together. So there's definitely ways to manage your time and get the production done. It may be more of your time doing it if you don't have a lot of staff, but it really depends on what you're willing to stomach and what you want to do to get things going. But also coming from a belief, if you're an independent director or an instructor, or I say independent, but just by yourself, and you build the program for a year or two, I bet you will start attracting people that want to come teach with you. Because I'll be honest, a lot of people don't want to build something. They want to be a part of something, but they don't want to build it.
Right.
So the moment you build a platform and you show them that, then yeah, they might want to come and be a part of it. So, but that takes a different kind of talent too, to be able to.
We could probably do a whole podcast just on staff management and staff, all that thing. But I think, just 2 cents on ways to get your staff started is make sure that you're having really clear expectations from the beginning with anybody that you talk to about coming in to work with you. If it's that college kid who has that long drive, tell them what you need and what you don't need, and then live with what you said. And tell them what they're going to get paid or not get paid, and live with what you said and make good on it. If you can keep your word on this brand new thing that someone's taking a chance on you to help you, then that's going to be a good start.
Yep, absolutely. And, one thing that I know when you're bringing on younger staff members or just a staff member coming on for the first time, the more autonomy you can give them, the more ability they have to help shape and mold your system, the more inviting it is, you know, on that. Especially, it really determines on what level of education they're on. They might just be like, hey, I just need to deal with the snares, and that's all I'm doing. Don't ask me about prop questions. I can't. I'm not there, and that's fine.
Right.
But to be able to give them that opportunity to expand and be creative outside of just teaching, I think is a good carrot to dangle for people on that end. But yeah, when you're trying to figure out the rehearsal schedule, we kind of said it before, you want to determine whether or not, hey, I can only do 1, 2, or 3 hour rehearsal a week because we have all these other projects that we do with concert band, with wind ensemble, with choir, whatever that is that you want to, be considerate to those things. And then you determine, hey, so that means we might do a standstill percussion show this year just to get everybody moving on it, and that's totally great. That's fine. That's why that class exists, for that type of stuff. And but don't be afraid to get in where you fit in, because ultimately it's the kids' experience, and you want to kind of show them as much as you possibly can. And most importantly, when groups get in and they just do the standstill 1 year, they're going to realize, hey, we can do more than this.
Right.
We can get a floor and paint it if we need to. And, you can level up incrementally and not feel like you have to go, head under the water full deep into something. Sure. But yeah, and then of course determine your rehearsal schedule, your staffing, all that stuff goes into determining what kind of show you're going to get. So all these variables need to be talked about, thought about before you just willy-nilly go find a show that you would want to play. As a staff, that's the worst thing you could possibly do,
Right.
And you want to make sure you have all the support system that allows your investment of the show, of props, of whatever, to live correctly, so make sure all that stuff's correct. The next thing is budgeting and show aesthetics. So budgeting, you want to be, how do I say this, being nice out there, fundraising's a problem. A lot of times fundraising can be reactionary to where they get to their December indoor meeting or November indoor meeting, like, all right, let's fundraise. You're too late. You're already too late. So you should be fundraising now for indoor, so that when you have that indoor meeting of interest, you're like, hey, we've already got 5,000 in the kitty. Now we can use that for a floor or props, and we can bring down the members' dues. Because what you don't want to do is start with no fundraising and say it's going to cost this amount of money, and you put up a high-end dollar amount because there's no money in the kitty, and now they're like, I can't pay $2,000, and then they don't do it, and then that number keeps going up more and more and more because you started with 30 kids and now you're down to 22, and now it's $2,500 a kid. So there's a lot of forethought that needs to go into this with like how you want to build your program, and it starts with money. You know, there's not many things in this world that time or money cannot solve, and this is one of those things where you need money.
Yeah.
So, and most importantly, if the program is able to raise money with some forethought of fundraising, then it takes it off the weight of the members,
Right.
and then it helps the interest when you do the cattle call for the school, for the piano player, for the drum set player, whatever. They come in, they're not like, it's $2,500 to do this,
Sure,
or $2,000, or whatever it is. You can back that price down by just being proactive in the fundraising. And I'm not talking like selling donuts. I'm talking go out there and do some things. I don't know what is different for every program, but there's ways out there that you could fundraise dollars that fold and not
jingle,
yeah. Right?
But yeah, with that budget, if you need help putting together a budget for your indoor, not that we could account for every single scenario that you're going to deal with, but if you just need to know like what a floor costs, what uniforms cost, all that kind of stuff, reach out to us. Or again, you could reach out to another director who has experience with this, you know, and just ask that question. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to share.
Sure, yeah. And I think one of the things that I pride myself on, because one of the reasons why I started Synced Up is because we want to be able to be that support system for band directors. Instead of them having to call 5 different places to get all these things done, they should be able to call one place. We can give them the full budget amount of what it's going to be. That's why we have packages. That's why we have this and that. There's no hidden costs on things. They can pay for this and they know exactly what it's going to be. And most importantly, they can get a novice show written for free if it's watered down from one of our current catalog shows. So we know the novice thing is people are beating down the door to try to find an entry point into the activity that's not missing 3 or 4 steps before they can get there, right?
Right.
So as a company, we've dedicated ourselves now to providing those novice experiences with the cool sound design elements and all the things that you like about the show. We can now put it in a direction to where it doesn't feel like a novice show as far as an elementary type show, but it has those type of skill sets that your students can be successful with, but they're swimming in the environment that you originally liked from the show that you saw in the catalog. So that is one thing that I feel really good about what we're doing as a company, is be able to provide that without any extra cost. And eventually we're going to be able to have a whole full catalog of novice, but for right now, people can just say, hey, I want that show, but novice. I'm like, cool, we'll have it for you.
Turn it around.
Yeah, yep. which is awesome, and it's we're finally at a point now where we can do that. And
right. Yeah, we can meet you wherever you're at. We can meet you there. And you're putting together the budget for your season. You don't want to overextend, because if it's the difference between having to teach the whole thing by yourself or getting another staff member in, or let's fundraise a little extra hard, a little extra effort into that, and let's work together on putting together costs that are going to work for you. Because it's not about keeping up with the Joneses. Every time you think that props are going to help you win, boy, are you going to get beaten by somebody that doesn't have what you spent money. It just depends, right? It depends on the execution, but spending money on its own is never what's going to win you the trophy.
No, it's
right?
not. And like the props and the aesthetics is basically what we call the and effect, because everybody's going to get judged on playing and moving first, right? The props and all the other extra stuff is really what you have to present. And we are playing and moving as well as everybody else, and we're doing this. But if all you have is ands and no playing and moving at a level that's competitive where you want to be, those
Sure.
props, it's wasted money.
Right.
So it's definitely, you want to put your focus on the things like staff and education and supporting the program first to make sure that's healthy before you start, going above and beyond and spending money on things that don't matter,
Sure.
In the end.
Right.
But,
by all means, immersive sets are delightful if that's right for your program.
Yeah, but if you're budget conscious, I'm not saying don't do it. I absolutely do it. I think
Right.
it provides the audience experience and the members' experience to be better. But if you're down to counting pennies and it's a prop or a staff member every day of the week.
You got it.
Yep. on that end. But yeah, and I guess the last thing is logistics and planning, which is basically everything that we just kind of talked about, but all the way up to adding the calendar, right? So you want to be able to look ahead and be like, cool, our season's going to end at circuit championships this year. we're not going to go to Dayton, but I really want to take a van full of members up there so that we can at least see it, because maybe in 2 years I want to go to Dayton, but I want to make sure they go there and we can walk the path that members take at show site, so that all that still feels familiar. It's not the first time we go down the tunnel. So there's different experiences that you can do on that end if you plan for that without having to go up there and take your group up there and go through the rigmarole. But when you're talking about planning out the season, clearly rehearsal schedules, the shows or whatever, I like to think about overarching planning, like, cool, we're starting an indoor group this year, but where are we going to do in 3 years? Like, I want to look at that type of planning. Okay, I need to be budgeting because I know we're going to be growing, so I need to get another marimba.
Yep.
I know we need a sound system, and we don't have a computer. We've been doing triggers off of a machine or whatever, and now I need a synth and a dedicated computer. So like those long-term, so call them calendar investments that you want to put into the program, you just got to be able to look past today and be like, okay, we can't do this today, but in 2 years, in a year, we're going to be able to do this. And then next year, we're going to go to Dayton. And, like that's the type of calendar planning I like to do when I'm thinking about a program. Because the yearly program, I mean, that's just daily task.
Right.
Hey, we're going to rehearse this day, contest on this day, on a show day, it's going to look like this, on a rehearsal day, it's going to look like this.
Right.
All those things vary from, ensemble to ensemble, but.
Yep. But nobody got to Scholastic World without starting with those things. Having a little bit of vision, self-belief. I'm willing to have a new conversation I haven't had before. I'm willing to go ask somebody for money and tell them why it's important and all the kids it's going to serve. I'm willing to put myself out there and give a couple hours that I feel a little uncomfortable about. Like, directors, we know what you're given, right? It's a lot, but you're doing it for the kids. You're doing it for the program. And if you're looking down 3 years from now and thinking what you're going to get out of it, it's fantastic, and that could be you, Scholastic World, in the future. You can do it. Every single one of them can look in the rearview mirror and see where it came from.
Yeah, and, there's plenty of great programs out there to follow as far as like their trajectory on what they did. I want to say Avon High School, because like, of course, they're great now, but they had an A-class group at one point in time. And what Jay Webb did with them when WGI was in its infancy, they were in A-class and they won. They went to open class, they did it, went to world. So they went through all the classes and the trajectory of what a normal group probably would do when they're getting their feet wet. And they had a lot of success with it. Now that program is an anomaly in the United States right now because
Definitely,
of,
right.
I mean, you can't, I want to do that. No, you're not going to. But just to be able to follow their trajectory over the years to understand why Avon is what it is now, you can see 20 years of them doing that and building that system. Because too often people look at programs and just say Avon again and think like, well, I'll never be able to do that. It's like, yeah, you could. It takes time,
Sure.
and money.
Yep.
On both of those things. So, and it's resources, it's all of that. And you got to start small. They did, and you just kind of do your thing and kind of see where it goes. So
maybe some good thoughts in conclusion here. We want you to be successful. We want you to be able to make it happen for your students and your program. But something just to look at this point in your planning is think about not overextending yourself as the director, right? So what's it going to be? Are you going to choose music that is a stretch for your kids and you're going to have to really lay in on sectionals and like that's where you're going to give extra time because you consciously chose that music? You're making the choice, right? And of course, if you're picking one of our shows, you could talk to us about getting it adjusted in difficulty to make it correct for your ensemble. But again, you're thinking about that. What are my hours of rehearsal and developing the music? Or if you were gonna write your own show, which I know a lot of young programs go, I'm gonna write my own show. Well, think about what that time is gonna be for you because you only have 24 hours in the day. So are you building the props that you said you were gonna build? Right? So like, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's think about all the different I wants and come up with a few that are attainable in the bag. I know my transportation's good because I had that conversation. I know I picked a show that's manageable and fun and the kids are gonna dig it.
And I have band parents that can help me build props.
Right.
Like figure out what your resources are and your assets are And then divide on what you as the director can do, and then what you need to delegate. So delegate and communicate.
Right.
You know?
And if one of those is like a big gaping hole in that equation and it's just like, hey, I have no solution here. Well, then again, maybe don't overextend yourself on everything else and solve that, right? And kind of work on it. But you don't need to keep up with the Joneses and do everything this year. What you need to do is make a good plan. Don't stress yourself out. Talk to directors who do it as well. Talk to us. You know, there's people out there who want to help you. And I think right now in September and October, your score is 100. You know, you've got all the kids and all that. You know what I mean? So like start with everything going well foundationally with some good planning. And I think we covered a lot of good topics. We'd love to hear from you in the comments, or you can always reach out to us through our website. We'd love to talk indoor. We're passionate about this stuff. So
No, absolutely. And it's never too early. Like right now, we're still wrapping up fall stuff for everybody, which, I mean, we're pretty much done. But I'm just having 3 to 4 indoor meetings a day now with people. So it's not too early to get to it, for sure.
love to hear from you.
These other people don't think it's too early.
Right.
So
That's right.
but no, it's good. Earlier the better, you know. The more time you have to prepare, the better their productions are going to be. You know, the better you understand your program and what they can do or can't do, you know, all of that.
And wouldn't it be great to have organizational pizza night with a show reveal if you wanted to, with a uniform sketch if you wanted to, with a whole thing? You know, you could do all of that. You can do it. Just start thinking now, and, you know, we can help you put together something really good if you want to work with us. So,
Yep, awesome.
all right. Well, thanks for joining us on End Zone to End Zone today. Good luck. We'll see you on the floor for Indoor 2025.
That's next year.
That's right.
So it's coming up.
That's right.
See you.